Welcome to a very special week here on My Best Story. As you may or may not know, we're in the midst of Pride Month. As such, I wanted to be sure and give a voice to members of the LGBTQ plus community. Therefore, I'll be releasing a new episode every day for the next 4 days featuring a member of that community telling a story close to their heart. I hope you'll join me every day this week. I'm Travis Tidmore. Join me as I discover Lytton St. Stephen's best story. Lytton, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Well, how are you?
Doing good. Lytton, tell us your backstory.
So a little bit about my backstory. I'm originally from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I was born and raised. I was also raised in a cult and homeschooled through my entire childhood, and then I moved here to Amarillo in not quite 2 years ago, but at the very end of 2018. And so I've been here just about a year and a half now.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lytton, what is your best story?
So one of my favorite stories has always been, so a little background. Of course, I grew up very, very, very closely with my family, my immediate family, and some of in particular, my mother's father, so my grandfather on my maternal side, and he was really, really close to myself and to my siblings. He was kind of like one of the main people that was in my life through my whole childhood, and so we were very close to him. He was someone that I remember as a kid. I would often, we were only allowed to watch like very old movies. We never really watched many contemporary films, but so we watched a lot of, like, I remember John Wayne a lot and Shirley Temple. And anyway, John Wayne was one of the movies where in all those movies, because I watched them so often, I often was very confused about John Wayne and my grandfather. Like, I thought they were maybe the same person, and I just remember being very confused about that as a kid. And it was interesting to me. I remember when my grandfather died, my cousin, my eldest cousin, gave a little speech, at the funeral, and talked a little bit about my grandfather. And one of the things he said, which we had never talked about, but he said that he was also confused about my grandfather and John Wayne. And I just thought, oh my gosh, it was such an interesting moment to me because we had never discussed it. So it was just so interesting that it had a similar, feeling. I have a picture of my grandfather I thought I would show because it's one of my favorite photos of him. And
Very nice.
him on a horse, which is maybe part of why I was always confused about John Wayne and my grandfather. Anyhow, so as kids, we didn't have a lot of other support. We were pretty isolated just because of the cult upbringing. And so my grandfather was really like the main person we would always kind of be like running to whenever anything went wrong. And so he was always there for us, always ready to like help us out. So my father was very invested in like trying to provide other, I guess, experiences for us. And one of the ways he did that was he would get completely random like farm animals and just have them there for a short period of time. And some he would slaughter, and then some were just like met terrible demises, which is very sad, but also bizarre. It's just like a odd childhood regarding animals. And so one time he bought a steer, and he thought that would be, I guess, an interesting learning experience for us. And so we had a little bit of land, not a lot of land, just a little bit of land, like just enough for something like that to kind of exist in the area. And so he had also he'd gotten a bunch of, in New Mexico, there's like an apple season, and all the apples come into, they're ripe, and then folks like to come in and collect them. And we had done something like that. And we had a lot of apples in the backyard, and we used some of them, and of course some of them just sort of went bad. So they were sitting out in the sun, putrefying, and and then the steer got out and just ate so many of these old, like, rancid apples, and he kind of got like, I guess he got drunk is really what happened. Like the steer just got drunk. And he was wreaking havoc in the backyard, just tearing everything up. My father had like an old camper shell in the back, and he was just, tearing into that. And we were all completely freaked out, like inside the house at the window, just watching the steer go bonkers outside. So of course we call my grandfather, because my father was like kind of, working a lot. He was sort of not really available. And so we called my grandfather, like, please come over. We don't know what to do. We're all shrieking and freaking out. So he comes over, and it should be noted, just on the photo, my grandfather was raised on a ranch. His father actually came over on one of the land grants that Spain was giving out at the time in the early part of the century. So he was born on a ranch, like the whole shebang, the real deal. And he came over, and we were all just like, my mother was warning him, like, be careful, this steer is going wild. And my grandfather was like, okay, don't worry, I got it. And we were like, do you though? Like, it is an entire steer outside, and you are one person. And he kind of like rummaged around in our back porch. My father always had a bunch of tools and stuff, and he just picked up like a pipe, like a lead pipe, and we were all watching him, wondering what the hell he was going to do with a lead pipe, like walking out there with that and nothing else. And I think I was expecting, like, I don't know, a lasso or like ropes or, something to kind of this steer. He walks out almost empty-handed, and the steer like saw him. He entered this like the outer gate, and he kind of just looked at the steer, and the steer saw him and like started doing the whole, like, gonna run at him. And we were like, oh my gosh, my grandfather's gonna get impaled, like it's gonna get so much worse. And then the steer ran at him like full force, and my grandfather just stood there, like stood his ground, just waited. And as soon as the steer got within like striking distance, he just smacked him across the snout really hard, and the steer completely stopped, turned tail, and like went right back in his pen immediately. And we were all just like, oh my god. My grandfather's status in our household is like just the coolest thing since sliced bread like was cemented. And so, there are so many little instances like that where my grandfather just was such a like badass superhero in my life. And but that was one of the ones we were all just completely like, we were like a little fan club inside the house, just oohing and awing about it. And and it was just kind of cool. My grandfather was always such a presence of like safety in my life, and always there he just like knew how to fix things. He was a very like practical minded person, and he always just knew what to do. He was very good about that. And so I think that's one of my fondest memories of my grandfather when I think about him was that, just standing up to drunken steers and smacking them across the snout. So he was always good for that. So that's one of my favorite stories about my grandfather.
That's very funny. When you said he came over, I was like, okay, so he brought a rope, and then you said he rummaged in the porch for something. I was like, well, he's got to find a rope, and then you were like, a lead pipe, and I was like, what?
I know, it's like my grandfather in the backyard with a lead pipe. It's like clue, like a rustic bird.
That's fantastic.
It was pretty great, yeah.
Excellent. Well, Lytton, where can people find you online?
So they can find me on Instagram. I'm at Queer Villainy is my handle, and I'm of course on Facebook as well. Just Lytton St. Stephen, and yeah, those are the main places. I'm not savvy enough to be on Twitter because I think it requires a certain level of intelligence, and I just don't have that. So I do Instagram, like I'm good at the visual. But yeah, you can find me there.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking me. It was really fun to be able to tell this story about my grandfather, and I don't think I've ever told that in a public space, so it was really fun. So thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Well, that's what this show is for, is to collect those stories that people maybe haven't heard before and put them out there for everyone to hear. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you.
Special thanks to Lytton for joining us and telling us their story. Please check back every day the rest of this week, as we'll be releasing new episodes every day for Pride 2020. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Our title music is Red, White, Black, and Blue by Peg and the Rejected. If you have a story you'd like to tell, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or via email. All those links are in the description. Until next time, go live your best story.